10 spine-chilling ghost encounters uncovered by ICU nurses, sinister tales from the haunted rooms. Julie Gordon stared down the dimly lit hallway of St. Michael's Hospital, her heart hammering against her chest, drumming the rhythm of a war dance. Shadows flickered at the edges of her vision, whispering secrets drenched in sorrow. On a night shift like any other, she knew the haunted whispers that traveled these sterile, peeling walls all too well. "They say," a colleague had once said, her eyes wide with fear, "those who die here don't really leave." Once a proud facility, it had turned into a decaying tomb for the forgotten, and Julie felt its pulse echo in her bones. She stepped into the ICU, where the air hung heavy with the weight of unfulfilled hopes. A gurney wheeled past as a fellow nurse stifled a scream, their mischievous laughter evaporating when they caught a glimpse of the corner where shadows conspired. Just the darkness, Julie reassured herself, though the chill that crept up her spine betrayed her thoughts. The stories of the shadow doctor came rushing back, a figure that embodied betrayal, lurking beyond the veil, leading souls to untimely ends. She shook her head, pushing superstition aside. As she swapped out 4 bags, a cold breeze rustled through the room, brushing against her ear like the softest touch a whisper. She turned, heart racing. Empty. Yet something simmered beneath the surface. What had she signed up for, working these late hours? She glanced at her watch. Midnight loomed, and with it, the ghostly tales came alive. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The air thickened further, a suffocating sensation that pressed down on her chest. She overheard whispers, a pairing of soft lamentations weaving through the walls. One nurse, gray-haired and weary, spoke of a family tragedy from decades past, of a doctor corrupt, a patient lost forever, and spirits now haunting the corridors, seeking justice. Her heart sank as she realized every one of her colleagues had a ghost story to tell. Unexplainable encounters, each one more harrowing than the last. With every turn of the hall, Julie found herself peering into rooms, afraid of what she might discover. One room felt particularly different, colliding with a gut-wrenching pull that told her to enter. Inside, a patient sat up, eyes wild, stricken with panic. "They're here!" she screamed, gripping the sheets like a lifeline. "They come for me!" In that moment, Julie felt the room tremble. The shadows danced with a malevolent streak. The whispers turned into agonized cries, echoing from all sides. Julie could see the whitewashed walls shimmering, flickering like the ancient fluorescent lights above. They pulsated with life. The patient's gaze fixed on a shadow just behind Julie, a figure with an ominous presence. The very essence of fear dripped from its figure, entwining with despair. Julie rushed back, heart racing, hands trembling. The stories weren't just tales, they were warnings. Shadows buried deep in every smile she knew and each shriek that escaped their lips. As she backed away, an icy breath caressed her neck. "Get out," it hissed. A scream lodged in her throat as a jolt of realization struck. She was entwined in a web spun from past lives, trapped by the very fabric of her community's darkest secrets. The clock ticked ominously as dread encased her, shadows panting closer. She could feel their hunger, their relentless insistence for retribution. With every second, the walls seemed to close in. Who was she to confront such darkness? As the night crept on and the whispers grew louder, Julie couldn't shake the feeling the spirits had been waiting for her. They wanted her to know their pain. They were calling, but to answer meant she had to uncover the truth, a truth that could threaten not just her life, but her son's as well. As the very fabric of the hospital writhed, she knew one thing: this was only the beginning. The echoes screamed for justice, and she was left standing on the precipice, heart racing. Where do the dead go from here? Julie stumbled back into the corridor, breathing hard, panic surging through her veins. The cool tiles felt foreign beneath her feet, the hospital now unfathomable, a living nightmare rather than a sanctuary. Shadows taunted her from every corner. She pressed her back against the wall, trying to steady herself as memories of stories shared and warnings uttered swirled in her mind. Each step felt like a trap, each creak of the floor echoing louder than any heartbeat. She turned to the nurse's station, desperate to find someone else, someone who might share her vision of terror. But when she reached it, the dim overhead light flickered, and to her horror, it revealed the station was vacant. Panic clawed at her throat. "Where is everyone?" she whispered. The silence pressed in, thick and oppressive, as if the very air conspired against her. Shaking, she moved back down the hall, each room she passed silently assessing her, mocking her cowardice. Too frightened to linger, she dragged her gaze away from the shadows lurking. Suddenly, the shrill buzz of a phone shattered the quiet. Julie's breath caught. It came from one of the rooms. Her instincts screamed for her to run, but curiosity rooted her to the spot. She explored the darkness, inching toward room 217. The door was ajar, an invitation or a trap she couldn't tell. With a deep breath, she pushed the door open. The sight inside sent a chill racing up her spine. A patient lay in bed, eyes wide and unblinking. But it wasn't the patient that caught her attention, it was the phone, humming irritably on the bedside table, its screen awash with light. A hand slowly reached out, translucent yet menacing. It was the shadow doctor. "Help me," the patient rasped, the voice soaked in agony. Julie's heart raced. "She's been taken," the patient mumbled, eyes darting towards the ghostly figure creeping closer. "You need to help her, or they'll take you too." Julie took a step back, terror wrenching at her core. "What are you talking about?" She clutched the door frame, a futile attempt to anchor herself. But the shadow doctor turned on her, an unmoving face hiding behind a smile too wide, revealing jagged teeth that glimmered in the fluorescent light. Julie felt her stomach drop. The shadows became hands, pressing in on her. There was nowhere to run. "They want what's theirs," it hissed, approaching with measured steps, reaching out. Fighting every instinct to flee, Julie willed herself to remain. "I have to save my son," she shouted, voice shaky yet desperate. "Please, don't take him." At those words, the room froze. The apparition halted, as if drawn by her fear. For a breathless moment, the darkness stilled. The patient turned, wide eyes piercing like daggers. "Sacrifices must be made," the patient breathed, her voice a soft, mournful echo. "Hear the cries, they're never satisfied." "What do you mean?" Julie's voice cracked as reality shredded around her, illusions and truths blending into a nightmarish haze. "Sleepwalking, your time is up," the patient rasped, her figure hazed. Shadows swirled violently, creating an enchanting yet horrific dance that bound them together, living, dead, ensnared. Julie staggered as the shadow's fingers brushed her arm. An electric jolt coursed through her, and her instincts screamed for her to flee. But as she turned to run, a frigid grip closed around her wrist, yanking her back with unyielding force. She faced the specter. "No escape, only justice," it hissed, the words wrapping around her mind like an icy chain. The figure loomed, a tapestry of horrors woven into reality. Panic surged as she desperately fought against the pull, breaths short and shallow. Inside her, an overwhelming dread rose. How many had fallen before her? How many remained forgotten? "Justice!" she screamed, pulling away, lungs burning. A laugh echoed through the halls, cruel and hollow, reverberating against the walls. Julie turned her back and fled, racing through the corridors, her own heartbeat drowning out the whispers. But as she sprinted toward the exit, that familiar sensation returned. The cold. Fingers of past lives closed around her, tugging her toward the spiraling abyss. With each step, she felt her truth slipping away, her memories mixing with ghostly cries of the past, life and death twining. And just as she thought she could break free, darkness encased her vision, another figure emerging in her way. The hospital's heartbeat matched her own, pushing her toward a choice she never wanted to face. In the depths of hellish choice, the question rang painfully clear: what would she sacrifice to end this torment? As shadows danced excitedly around her, Julie understood this nightmare was just beginning. Each echo, each whisper grew louder, beckoning her further into the unknown. Julie ran, the oppressive darkness clawing at her heels as she navigated the maze of sterile walls. No matter how fast she sprinted, she felt the shadows chasing, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. The hospital, once a bastion of healing, now morphed into a labyrinth of despair, each turn unveiling horrors she couldn't comprehend. Another sudden noise, a door creaking open further down the corridor, sent a chill racing through her veins. She paused, heart thudding, ears straining to catch any sound. The whispers were back, echoing warnings and mockery, blending into a single, haunting chant. Julie, what was happening? She didn't have the luxury of answers. She turned, ready to bolt again, when she caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of her eye. The silhouette of a child, small and fragile, peered from the shadows of room 219. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it an illusion? Was it her son? Mom. The voice was barely a whisper, a heartbreaking plea that rang with familiarity and longing. Julie stepped closer, fighting her instincts to flee. As she approached the door, another fierce gust of cold air wrapped around her, making her shiver. "Help me!" The child's face emerged from the darkness, hollow eyes, pale skin. It was unmistakably him. Panic surged and plunged deep into her. "Sam!" she cried, reaching out. But then, from behind the child, a figure loomed, jagged and twisting, grinning wide with sharpened teeth. The shadow doctor had returned, its form pulsing in and out, blending with the darkness, hungrily awaiting her reaction. "It's time, Julie," it whispered, tones coated with glee. "Time to choose. Leave him alone." She yelled, voice breaking, thrusting her hands forward as if to shield her son from whatever malevolent force threatened them. The room felt alive, pulsating with a sickening hunger that clawed at her reality. "He doesn't belong to you," the doctor hissed, extending a clawed hand toward Sam. "He is already part of us. And you will join him soon." "No." Desperation coursed through her. Julie could feel the walls closing in, the suffocating shadows tightening around her as they laughed with a twisted glee. Mustering every ounce of strength, she threw herself toward the child, plunging into his embrace. "I'm here, Sam. I want to let them take you." But instead of the warmth of her son, her arms wrapped around cold air, he vanished like smoke, leaving behind only a chilling echo. The doctor's laugh carved into her soul. "Your love is not enough. Sacrifice is the only answer." Sacrifice? Julie gasped, reeling from the sudden cold realization. The weight of the world pressed down all around her. It dawned on her that the only way to escape was to relinquish something precious. But who could she give up? The thought sent her spiraling back into the depths of despair. The hospital shifted, walls trembling, morphing around her. The familiar turns felt foreign now, leading her deeper into a realm of nightmares. Each flickering light bulb overhead now looked like a cruel eye, watching and judging her choices. Julie stumbled back, feeling her footing slip as memories flooded in, all the lost faces of those who never returned. "Help them," whispered a voice lurking in the shadows. "You must save them both." What did she have to lose now? Would giving in to the shadowy allure finally break the cycle? She stood torn between worlds, desperation clawing. The exit seemed to loom ahead, drawing her in. As her fingers brushed the cold, metallic handle, the whispers grew louder, twisting her resolve. "Choose, Julie, choose." She hesitated at the threshold, swept up in a storm of confusion and dread. What if this choice made everything worse? What if she lost not just Sam but herself in the process? Before she could gather her thoughts, a crashing sound erupted behind her. A door flung open, revealing yet another shadow, this one larger and more menacing. It stepped forward, eyes glimmering in the dim light, reflecting her own despair back at her. "Don't run, you can't escape," it rasped, and in that moment, Julie knew she was deeper in this horror than she had ever imagined. With her heart racing, Julie turned back to the noise. The shadows danced eagerly, and with a sudden rush of adrenaline, she dashed into the waiting darkness, determined to confront whatever lay ahead to discover the truth behind her choices. As she plunged deeper into the abyss, she could hear an anguished scream rising from the depths. Was it Sam? Could she save him? In that moment, a painful truth rang clear: this nightmare was far from over, and whatever horrors awaited her, they were about to be unleashed. What dark revelation would she unearth next, and who would it cost her? Julie ran, her breath coming in ragged gasps, eyes wide with terror. The shadows clung to her, reaching out, pushing her deeper into the blackened halls of the hospital. Time ceased to exist. With every frantic step, her mind screamed to find Sam, but the darkness warped her senses. It felt like an eternity since she had seen any familiar face. The anguished scream echoed again, clearer this time, more heart-wrenching. "Mom!" A plea that thrust her heart into a vice. She swerved through familiar corridors and caught glimpses of distorted figures lurking within room door frames, their silhouettes grotesque and mocking. Were they patients? Lost souls? The thought sent a shiver through her. "Sam!" She called, but her voice quivered and faded into the suffocating silence, swallowed by the oppressive gloom. Suddenly, a hand grasped her shoulder from behind. Julie whirled around, fists raised, ready to fight whatever emerged from the darkness. It was a nurse, her face pale and eyes wide with panic. "We have to go," the nurse said, breathless. "They're coming." "Who?" Panic rose in Julie's throat like bile. "What is happening? Where is my son?" The nurse's eyes darted around nervously, shadows flickering across her face, distorting her features. "You need to trust me. They feed on fear. If they catch you, it's over." Julie's heart raced anew. "I can't leave without him." "Then you must be clever," the nurse urged, gripping her arm. "Choose your path wisely. We don't have much time." Before Julie could respond, the corridor reverberated with manic laughter, an echoing cacophony accompanied by the creaking of rusty gurneys. The shadows moved, swirling into a frenzied vortex, shifting the walls and reshaping the rooms, pulling them into another dimension altogether. When the chaos subsided, the nurse was gone, leaving only a cold imprint of her touch. Julie stood alone, trembling, the laughter morphing into anguished cries. Where had she gone? Her instinct screamed to flee, but where to? If she didn't find Sam, would she be left with nothing but darkness? Drawing a deep breath, she advanced toward room 219, the door hanging ajar. The room's lights flickered ominously, casting an orange hue that felt sickening and oppressive. "Please, Sam," she croaked. But the shadows shifted, dark tendrils snaking from under the bed, curling around her ankles, pulling her toward the floor. She wrestled, heart throbbing louder in her chest. "Let me go." Instead, the shadows thickened, crystallizing into a face, grotesquely contorted. "Fear feeds us, Julie. Embrace it." It rasped. The shadow doctor's voice echoed within the darkness, twisting around her, tightening like a noose. Suddenly, she realized this was all a trap. If she gave in to despair, if she allowed the shadows to consume her, they would win. The thought was her lifebuoy in the churning sea of madness. With newfound determination, she summoned the memory of Sam's laughter, the way his eyes sparkled like stars. "I will never let you take him," she screamed. The shadows recoiled at her defiance, screeching in agony. She stumbled backward, escaping the tendrils as they writhed beneath her, releasing her from their grasp. She soared past the threshold of room 219 and collided with the wall opposite, breathing hard. Julie's heart thudded, but her resolve solidified like steel. "I will find you, Sam," she vowed, eyes narrowing. "And I will fight. With a new sense of purpose, she pressed forward. Each room she passed seemed to converge into a single chaotic entity, whispering secrets that threatened to fracture her mind. You can't hide, Julie. You can only surrender, but surrendering was not her option. Not now. Ahead of her, the hallway twisted, leading toward a faint light that flickered invitingly. Julie could sense it, a glimmer of hope. And just as she stepped closer, the walls convulsed violently. This is only the beginning. The darkness roared, its voice reverberating through the very air around her. With terrified breaths, she lunged into the illuminated space ahead, searching for a way out. But a chilling thought crept through her mind. What if she had unleashed something worse? What if Sam wasn't he the one they wanted after all? As light enveloped her, she could still hear the haunting echoes behind her. The darkness wasn't he finished yet. What dreadful truth awaited her in the light? The light flickered, illuminating the edges of a room that felt both familiar and alien. Julie squinted, her eyes adjusting as she stepped further inside. It was a waiting room, the kind you might find in any hospital, sterile, quiet, too quiet. A television muted in one corner, magazines strewn about the coffee table, but the atmosphere felt heavy, suffocating. Sam! She cried again, desperation fueling her voice. Where are you? She crept along the walls, every creak of the floorboards echoing like thunder in her ears. The dread coiled tighter around her heart, squeezing out hope. Would she find any trace of her son here, in this liminal space pulled taut by shadows? As she moved deeper into the room, she noticed something out of place, a flicker of movement behind the chair near the window. Her heart raced. Could it be him? She walked closer, trying to mask her trembling hands by clenching them into fists. Sam. The whisper barely left her lips before a guttural sound sliced through the silence, a low, menacing growl that resonated deep in her bones. The shadows twisted and churned, forming a shape that sent her instincts running. Fingers like icy tendrils shot out from the darkness, snatching at the corners of the room, each one grasping with sinister intent. Julie darted back, her breath hitching in her throat as the chair toppled over, revealing a figure huddled on the floor, a child. It wasn't Sam. Run! The boy shrieked, eyes wide with terror, fixed on the creeping shadows pounding towards them. They'll eat us. They'll eat us alive. Panic ignited within Julie. Where's your mom? Where's your family? She demanded, feeling a surge of protectiveness. I don't know. The boy sobbed, glancing toward the shadows that crawled as if they were alive, hungry. I was hiding. Please don't let them get us. The walls trembled around them, increasing in intensity as the shadows solidified, revealing grotesque faces twisted in anguish, eyes glinting like knives in the dark. Julie's bones felt frozen, each heartbeat echoing with dread. Together, she uttered fiercely, gathering her courage. We have to stick together. If we believe, if we fight. The boy looked incredulous, fear etching lines across his small face. What can we do against them? Suddenly, a deep, rasping voice fractured the air, resonating from the shadows. You think defiance will save you? We thrive on the weak. We will engulf you. Julie's heart raced, the creeping despair rising again. Get up. She urged the boy, scrambling towards him. We have to get out of here. We can't let them win. Just then, the ground shook violently, sending them both sprawling as the room shifted, walls pulsating like the organ of a beast. A scream of unholy laughter rang through the chamber, making her skin crawl. She rolled over, catching sight of figures standing in the dark, tall, stretching toward her like grotesque marionettes, guided by the puppet strings of her deepest fears. Julie, the boy whimpered, his small frame trembling beside her. She swallowed hard. Just hold my hand. The shadows loomed closer, tendrils snaking like vipers, hungry and relentless. Julie gripped the boy's hand tighter, her resolve blossoming again within the pit of her stomach. We're stronger than they think. With newfound strength, she surged to her feet, dragging the boy up too. "This way!" she shouted, running towards the door, every step an act of defiance against the terror pursuing them. But as they reached for the handle, ice-sharp fingers gripped her ankles, pulling her back into the depths of despair. "Let go! Let me go!" she screamed, even as she fought against the pull. The boy looked back, horrified, as shadows gobbled the space behind them, devouring the light they had just known. "I can't let them take you," he cried, his small voice cutting through the tension. Just then, the door flung open, revealing a blinding light that beckoned them. With a desperate yank, Julie hurled herself forward, dragging the boy into the open air. A surge of adrenaline coursed through her. But as they stumbled into the blinding brightness, a chilling laughter echoed behind them, mingled with a whisper that slithered through the air. "You think you have escaped, but this is just the beginning." As they collapsed in the wet grass outside the hospital entrance, the air cold and sweet, Julie's heart sank. What shadow loomed beyond their escape? What awaited them in the real world where darkness still lingered? As she looked down at the boy, a frozen knot formed in her gut. "Where do we go now?" he asked, eyes scanning the horizon filled with uncertainty. And just like that, the shadows morphed, swirling on the edge of the hospital like smoke, hinting at the darkness still lurking beyond the flickering lights. The night unveiled secrets yet to be exposed, and the hunt was far from over. "Nowhere is safe," a soft voice echoed from the darkness, raising a dreadful chill, chilling Julie to her core. What awaited them in the wider world, where shadows still beckoned? Julie's pulse quickened as she knelt on the damp grass. Night had descended heavily, draping everything in an oppressive darkness. A cold breeze swept through, swirling the pungent scent of earth and fear. "What do we do?" the boy whispered, his tiny voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. "Stay close," Julie replied, her stomach churning. She scanned the area, the shadows stretching behind the hospital like fingers reaching for them. The cold air felt charged, electrified with an unseen threat. "We can't let them find us." "Not again." A sound echoed from within the hospital, the haunting laughter they had narrowly escaped. The noise reverberated in the silence of the night, mocking them, reminding them that it was far from over. Her heart hammered in her chest as she looked around for a way out, but every direction felt like a trap. "Where is Sam?" the boy asked, eyes wide and brimming with tears. The worry hidden beneath his question squeezed at her heart. The mention of her son ignited a spark of determination within her. "We'll find him. I promise," she said, shaking off the panic that threatened to pull her down. "But we need to stay together. We have to keep moving." They took a hesitant step toward the parking lot, where dim streetlights flickered like dying stars. Julie's mind raced with the possibility of what awaited them. Was Sam safe? Or had the shadows found him too? "Look!" the boy pointed, his voice rising in pitch. "There's a car." He tugged at her arm, hopeful. Julie squinted into the darkness. A rusting sedan loomed a few yards away, its tires half submerged in the overgrown grass. Heart racing, they hurried toward it. She prayed the doors were unlocked, praying for any chance of escape. As they approached, the shadows seemed to jitter, wrapping tighter around the car like a hunger waiting to pounce. "Wait!" Julie yanked the boy back just as they reached the vehicle. She held her breath as she glanced around, heart in her throat. Something didn't feel right. An icy shiver raced up her spine. She opened the driver's side door, but the creaking hinges echoed too loudly, making her flinch. "Please, God, let it start," she muttered as she climbed inside, crouching low to avoid being seen. The boy scrambled in after her, panic glistening in his eyes. "Lock the doors!" he shrieked, and in a whirl of frantic motions, Julie fumbled with the locks. The click felt like a barrier against the tightening noose of dread encircling them. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel, inhaling the stale air as she scrambled to find the ignition, an old habit from another life, a whisper of normalcy they no longer knew. But as she reached for the keys, a deep rumble began in the shadows outside. The air shifted, thickening, as if the world held its breath. The boy's eyes darted to the window, wide with terror. "They're coming." Julie froze as the shadows swarmed around the car, pooling at the tires and licking at the windows like flames. The laughter erupted again higher, more sinister, and her body went cold. She felt the darkness creeping in, threading through cracks, searching for a weakness. A figure materialized before them, its featureless face looming against the faint light. "You think you found refuge?" It hissed, the words slithering into the air like venom. "You are still mine. Your fate is tethered to the shadows. Go. Go." Julie screamed, the instinct to flee igniting her limbs. She yanked the key from the ignition, but the ancient engine wheezed and sputtered, refusing to comply. "Please." The shadows pressed against the windows with desperation, icy fingers tracing ghostly patterns. A chorus of whispers rose from within, promising darkness and despair. Julie's heart raced, a thunderous drumbeat of impending doom. "Keep it down." She hissed at the boy, her voice barely above a whisper. Black tendrils slithered further, seeking any semblance of warmth. Then, a low thrum began to hum beneath them. The car jolted as if alive, a sudden surge that made Julie's breath hitch. "What is happening?" The boy whimpered, clutching her arm tightly. The shadowy figure pressed closer, eyes glinting like coals, mouth stretching wider in an acrid grin. "You cannot hide forever. You will always be ours." The sedan vibrated ominously, lights flickering weakly. With one final, juddering gasp, the engine roared to life, shattering the darkness with raw power. "Go! Go! Go!" Julie screamed, slamming the gear into drive. The tires screeched as they tore from the shadow's grasp, the grip loosening just enough for salvation. But even as they sped away, Julie felt a cold certainty settle in her stomach, the shadows would follow. In the rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of swirling darkness gathering, still hungry, bursting with rage. "Mom!" The boy shouted, pointing. "Look out!" Ahead, the road twisted into a thick darkness that gnawed hungrily at the edges of their fear. A flicker of movement in the trees suggested they were not alone. "Hold on!" she yelled, pressing down on the gas. The shadows were not finished with them yet. As the darkness surged around them, threatening to swallow the light whole, even the night couldn't be trusted anymore. Straws of hope splintered one by one. What awaited them in the turning shadows was now as uncertain as the road ahead. Would they make it? Or was the worst yet to come? The car hurtled down the cracked asphalt, a flicker of headlights cutting through the all-consuming dark. The boy's face was pale, and a bead of sweat rolled down his temple. "Faster, Mom!" he urged, tightening his grip on her arm. "They're right behind us." Julie's heart raced, not just from fear, but also from a gnawing guilt that spiraled her stomach. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were leaving something behind, someone behind. Sam. Was he still in that cursed hospital? The thought pierced her like a dagger. "Keep watching," she shouted, her voice cracking. She turned her head, glancing back through the rear window. A wave of blackness swelled and writhed, creeping closer, blotting out the stars. But lurking within that inky veil, she thought she saw shapes, twisted forms chasing after them, fragments of shattered memories. "Mom!" The boy's voice quivered, pulling her gaze back to the road. In the distance, headlights appeared, two sets, approaching rapidly. Relief flooded her soul, but it was short-lived. The cars didn't just drive toward them, they veered wildly into their lane. Julie slammed the brakes, the tires screeching, and the car jerked violently to a halt. "What are they doing?" she gasped as the cars came to a stop a mere foot away. The figures inside were shrouded in darkness, faces obscured. The air thickened with malevolence. "Get down!" she hissed, yanking the boy low into his seat. A figure exited the car to her right. The silhouette elongated, slumped, and began to walk towards them with a slow, deliberate pace. The figure was draped in long, tattered clothing, each step almost gliding. Julie's breath caught as terror tightened its grip like a vice. Shadows coiled around the figure's feet, and the boy whimpered beside her, pressing his face into her shoulder. "Drive away!" he cried, his voice muffled and full of panic. Julie's hands trembled on the wheel, the frantic thoughts racing through her mind. Should she stay? Should she confront whatever was coming her way? Did it even matter? Their pursuers were no longer just shadows obscuring the night, they were alive, breathing nightmares. The figure halted inches from the car, a dark aura pulsating around it. She could feel the cold seep through the glass, prickling her skin with dread. A faint whisper floated through the air, a soft murmur of her name. "Julie, Mom, run!" The boy's cry pierced through the haze of confusion, snapping her back to reality. "Okay. Okay." Panic surged as she turned back to the wheel, the engine rumbling beneath her like an added heartbeat. She fumbled with the gearshift, urgency mounting as she felt the air grow heavy with unholy intent. The whisper grew louder, more insistent. "You can't escape." She threw the car into reverse, tires spinning against the gravel, sending a cascade of dirt flying. A surge of adrenaline propelled her forward, the gas pedal pressed to the floor. She might have been leaving behind something valuable, but survival surged stronger. But her relief was short-lived. The shadows erupted, enveloping the sedan like a shroud. A scream ripped from the boy's throat, tearing through the thick air. "Mom!" Julie squinted into the dark, the road narrowing before her, speckled by flickering roadside signs. The laughter that echoed through the darkness was everywhere, ricocheting off the trees, mocking her with its sinister depth. Suddenly, the headlights flickered and the engine sputtered. "No, no, no!" Panic clawed at her throat as the car stuttered, the power bleeding away. The shadows pressed closer, enveloping them, leeching away hope and warmth. "Turn it back on!" the boy shouted, trying to yank on the key. "Please!" She slammed her foot onto the gas again, but nothing happened. They were trapped. The world outside became a swirling void, a cacophony of laughter and whispers, filling her head with despair. But then, a crack. It pierced through the darkness, igniting her senses. "What was that?" the boy asked, eyes wide, reflecting the eerie glow of an unseen light. Julie's heart stuttered. From the depths of the swirling night, a figure stepped forward. It was someone familiar. "Mom! Help!" It was Sam. "Sam!" She screamed, reaching for him, but the shadows tightened around her like a noose. As the figure turned towards her, his expression twisted in terror, and in that moment, the promise of salvation and damnation merged. The darkness was closing in, but she couldn't lose him again. She gritted her teeth, mustering all her strength. "Hang on, Sam. I'm coming." The air grew thicker, and the shadows tightened their grip. Could she really save her son from the clutches of the horrors they awakened? The engine emitted a final wheeze. Darkness surged. She knew then, in the heart of the torment, the greatest choice awaited her. What price would she pay for love? The darkness pressed around them, tightening its hold like an iron vice. Julie's heart thudded erratically as she fought against the suffocating despair. She was right there, just feet away from Sam, yet the shadows around them felt impenetrable. "Don't let go, Mom." The boy's voice trembled, filled with raw fear, and it sliced through the ensuing chaos. She couldn't take her eyes off Sam, his familiar form now obscured, swallowed by darkness. "Sam!" She shouted again, reaching toward him, desperation fueling her movements. But the shadows flickered, hungry tendrils reaching out to pull him back, as if nourished by their terrified cries. He took a step forward, his eyes wide, pleading. "Mom, please." But something then loomed behind him, a towering figure formed from the same blackness, its shape shifting grotesquely with every blink. Without thinking, she flung the car door open, ready to dive into that sinister void for her son. "I'm coming. Stay where you are." But before she could inch out, an icy hand grasped her wrist, yanking her back into the vehicle. The boy screamed, and the sound tore through her. She fought against the unseen force, but it held her tight, the icy fingers digging into her flesh. "Julie, you can't leave." The voice wrapped around her like a shroud, cruel and chilling. It sounded like Sam but twisted, laced with malice. A shadow moved closer, molding into a much larger form, obscured and unsettling. "Let him go." Julie screamed, rage igniting her fight. She twisted and pulled against the force, but it only tightened, sending waves of cold seeping through her. The car shook around her, rattling her thoughts. Then, she turned. "No. Release him." The shadow flickered, revealing a grotesque face, a mask of fear, mirroring her own. Julie's breath hitched. The figure bore Sam's features, twisted and elongated, grinning with something horrific that didn't belong to her son. "Mom," it hissed, a twisted mockery of her child's voice. Julie recoiled, rage surging. "Get away from him." With all her strength, she wrestled against the grip, finding a momentary release, enough time to tug the boy toward her. "Come on, Sam!" she shouted, forcing him toward the open door, into the treacherous night. But as she reached for him, the shadows around them exploded into laughter, and swirling dark mist surged around the car, trying to claw them back. "You can't escape, you have to choose." Julie echoed, confusion and anger bubbling over. "Choose what? Love or survival?" The voice seeped into her mind, seductive and sinister. With a quick glance, she realized something awful. If she saved Sam, they both might be trapped. Trapped in this horrifying cycle of despair. But the thought of walking away from him, her heart shattered at the very idea. "The darkness wants you," the boy cried, fear crackling in his voice. "Sam, listen to me. We have to let go." "No." He lunged back, trying to reach for the figure that was now morphing to mirror his own features. "Sam! Fight it!" Panic seized her chest, breaths short and burning. The shadows shifted, growing stronger, feeding off their fear, ready to consume them completely. "No. I'll save you." Julie lunged, her heart crumbling, ready to leap again into the nightmare for love, just as she felt the ground slip away beneath her feet. Everything was black, the laughter echoing, swirling around like a tempest. Momentum swung her back into the car. The darkness roared, all-consuming, and as panic engulfed her, a flicker of light cut through. It appeared in a distant corner of the abyss, drawing her gaze. "Sam!" Her voice was thick with tears. "Hold on." But the shadows lashed out, swirling and grinding against her will, as if trying to suffocate every ounce of hope. The light pulsed, and every beat whispered of a choice, one that could shatter the world as they knew it. Suddenly, the darkness pressed in once more, wrapping around them like a vice, as she felt the edges of her reality crumbling. What was she willing to sacrifice for the fleeting chance at salvation? And then the light blinked out. She gasped, grasping onto the boy beside her, and then everything fell into silence. Only darkness remained, waiting for the next moment, for the next choice that would decide their fate. In that childlike silence, as the weight of the unknown loomed like a shadow, an icy whisper curled around her heart. Will you embrace the darkness, or will you abandon your love? What path would she choose? Julie blinked in the thick darkness, the silence wrapped around her tightly like a funeral shroud. Her chest heaved, struggling against the weight of despair. Where was Sam? Had she lost him to the shadows? The thought clenched her heart, each rhythmic thud echoing against the walls of her mind. "Mom." The sound of Sam's voice cut through the dense air, but it was distant, warped, as though he called from deep within a well of shadows. A flicker of hope ignited in her chest, but just as quickly, it dimmed as the blackness shrouded her soul. "Sam!" she cried, desperation lacing each syllable. She strained to reach toward the hollow that felt like his voice, hoping against hope that she could meet him halfway. But every inch forward sent the shadows hissing, crawling, and wrapping back around her. From behind, the sinister voice echoed again, teasing and taunting, "Choose, Julie, love or survival." It coiled around her mind, threatening to bind her in chains of indecision. "Let him go!" she screamed again, the force of her will tearing against the grip of despair. The unseen tendrils of darkness writhed, tightening and pulling at her, attempting to suck the very essence from her soul. In that moment, a heartbeat, no, two heartbeats sounded against the void. One was hers. The second was a tiny flutter, faint but undeniable. Sam was still there. She could still save him. "Mom!" The plea stirred something in her fierce and primal. It reignited the flickering flame of a mother's love, burning bright against the encroaching shadow. "Hold on, Sam. I'm coming." Julie stubbornly pushed against the suffocating dark. With each movement, she felt a shift, the shadows seemed to recoil from her defiance, swirling in hesitation for the first time. "Julie," the voice warped into a growl, rage laced with sorrow. "You think you can fight this? You will lose him, and you will lose yourself. No. Not today." She powered through, each word a shield, unyielding against the encroaching gloom threatening to engulf her sanity. "Sam, I'm right here." With one last surge, she lunged into the overpowering darkness. The frigid mist clawed at her, gnashing hungrily at her resolve. Her heart raced, her breath came in ragged gasps, but her boy was still in there. And just when it seemed all would surrender to despair, a flicker of light, small and timid, glowed in the never-ending gloom. It pulsed rhythmically, guiding her as if it were tethered to her heart. She reached for it, stretching her hand toward the glimmer. The cold mist recoiled, hissing as the light pressed forward, illuminating the twisted shadows. Then, she saw him. Not as a distorted figure but as a small boy, pale and frightened. Beneath the layers of darkness, Sam stood rooted, his eyes wide, reflecting the light that came from her heart. "Mom!" he cried out, and she felt the fierce grip of love unfurling, giving her strength. But the laughter erupted around them, the sinister echoes of unseen watchers filled the air, shattering the fragile truth of the moment. Now the true test begins. Power surged around her, the light dimming as she faced the echoing shadows. She was on the precipice of an impossible choice. "Remember, Julie," the voice sneered. "Choose your love. Choose to stay or to save." What was the right choice? Could she cling to the thread of her child and risk everything for the chance of a sliver of light? Or would she give in to the darkness that was poised to swallow her whole? With her heart pounding, she took a breath, a heartbeat warning through the silence. Time hung thick in the air, and she closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the enormity of her decision. She opened them to face the shadows again. I want to abandon him, and yet what would the darkness demand next? The laughter crescendoed, a terrifying symphony echoing within her chest, as she felt the ground shift beneath her feet again. Would she dare plunge further into the abyss for love, or would the darkness trap them in an eternal nightmare? The darkness twisted around Julie, a living entity hungry for despair. The laughter echoed all around her, a taunting symphony that turned her heart to ice. But the flicker of light, her hope for Sam, blazed stubbornly in the shadows, refusing to extinguish. I want to abandon him. Julie's voice rang out, resolute, piercing the suffocating gloom that surrounded her. The shadows hesitated, flickering in frustration as if they understood the weight of her devotion. Love? Hissed the figure from within the darkness, its voice dripping with contempt. You think love will save you? It is not strong enough. Sacrifice is what binds you. But Julie shook her head, drawing strength from the light inside her. No. I will not let you take him. Each word felt like a shattering of chains, echoing through the depths of her despair. The shadows writhed, swirling with anger, distorting into grotesque shapes that twisted at the edges of her vision. But Julie knew where Sam was. She could feel him, the pulse of his spirit connected to hers, like distant stars flickering through the dark. "Mom!" Sam cried again, his small voice rising uncontrollably, and Julie's heart surged with fierce love. Taking a deep breath, she surged forward, into the shadowy maw that threatened to consume her. She could see Sam's outline becoming clearer as she ripped through the dark, the light within her growing brighter with her every step. Suddenly, the shadows erupted, and she felt icy fingers clawing at her ankles, pulling her back into the yielding depths. Breathing heavily, she fought against their grip, waving her arms, breaking the chains of terror binding her. "Get away from us!" she shouted, channeling all her love and determination into a single breath. The chamber shook with fury, the shadows thrashed, but she could feel their strength waning beneath her resolve. "Come, Sam. Take my hand." In that moment, the room split open, casting blinding light that fractured the darkness. Julie felt him lurch toward her, the warmth of the bond they shared blazing brightly against the void. She saw his eyes round with fear, yet filled with hope just as hers were. "Mom!" Sam echoed, and she instinctively reached for him, her fingers desperately clutching air, before they connected. The instant their hands touched, the darkness roared in agony, releasing its hold. The shadows twisted and shrieked, spinning dizzyingly like a vortex, desperate to reclaim what they had nearly captured. "Together!" Julie screamed, holding on tightly to her son. "We can break free!" Surges of light poured into the rift, blazing against the familiar faces of the lost ones, rising from the shadows they once feared. They were a chorus of voices now, echoing with the tales of sorrow, mingling with the strength of Julie's resolve. Each story, each spirit with ties to the hospital merged as one in solidarity, beacons of hope piercing through the shroud of despair. Julie felt herself lighten as the shadows recoiled, their laughter morphing into cries of frustration. The figures that pulled at her heart had finally united, and their combined power broke against the encroaching darkness. With one final, thunderous crash, the veil split wide open, exposing a path bursting with ethereal light. Julie turned to Sam, his eyes reflecting her shock and determination. "Let us go!" she cried, tugging him along as they darted forward, dashed through the liberated shadows, and raced embracing the warm embrace of daylight. As they sped into the light, the shadows crumbled behind them, whistling their eerie laments, fierce and powerless against the increasingly radiant bond of love. Julie inhaled, the scent of grass and softness filling her lungs, heart pounding. She was free, and so was Sam. They tumbled onto the grassy expanse outside the hospital, breathless yet embraced by warmth. Relief washed over her as Sam wrapped small arms around her, holding tight just as she held him. For now, the darkness had retreated. But as she looked back, the corners of the hospital seemed to pulse a lingering reminder, still clad in shadows. "Mom?" Sam asked, gazing up at her. "We're safe now," Julie replied, though uncertainty seeped through her words. They had faced the abyss, conquered the voices of despair, but deep down, she knew that the shadows weren't been vanquished forever. "Promise me," she whispered as they stood, "we will keep fighting. For all of them." A whirlwind of tales lay beyond those walls. They would shine light into the dark corners together. As they walked away from the hospital, hand in hand, Julie understood that the fight would never truly end. Darkness would always lurk, but love was their power, their ultimate weapon. And as they left, the shadows whispered once more in the night, but now, those whispers spoke of hope, tales of courage, and promises waiting to be fulfilled. But what would come next? The bond was stronger than before, forged in the fires of sacrifice, but would it withstand the whispers of the past? It was a journey ahead, and they would face it together. Because love and light were worth every fight. Now, you need to join the journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions. Get involved, join the conversation.